The next consideration is that of a discussion related to city council members doing business with the city of Dekalb.
Thank you, Mayor. As we're fully familiar and aware, there is significant discussion occurring throughout the community on the matter of whether or not council members should do business with the city of Dekalb. What we're asking the council tonight is whether or not you wish to consider some local legislation that would either prohibit members from doing business with Dekalb or otherwise limit it in some fashion. We're hearing a lot of things. Let's clarify a couple of things here. The fact that a council member can do business with his or her city is acknowledged in state statutes. There's nothing unlawful about a city council member doing business with the city. Now, the state statutes does provide some procedures and limitations in those instances where the city council has to vote on the matter. It's very clear. Where the city council has to vote on the matter, the state statutes provide for procedures and limitations in which a council member can do business with his or her city. However, if you look at our local legislation, our local rules and regulations, as well as our policies, which I provided for you in your background materials, there's nothing of any type of prohibition for those instances where the price is less than $20,000. So I want to make that clear. So we're asking for your direction on whether or not you, again, wish to limit. Some of your options, as I mentioned earlier, is to include an outright ban on council members doing any business with the city, or perhaps instead of that or in lieu of that, require that there be more controls, disclosures, and limitations in those instances where you may otherwise wish it to continue to occur. I think there's other information for you in the background materials that we included in our press release on this matter, and again in both our local ordinances and in our purchasing policies. So we'll take your direction on what you wish for us to bring back at a subsequent meeting to address this issue in a formal way.
Anyone want to take the lead on this one? Mr. Simpson.
First, my own bona fides. I am not a businessman. I do not own a business. I do not anticipate owning a business. No business person in this town has ever given me a bag of money. So this is this is totally gratuitous. This is a very small town, although it is growing, and many of the people who serve on our city council historically have been people who have business roots in this town, and they've often given of themselves in their service to serve in an aldermanic capacity. I'm not sure how many of our citizenry understand that the aldermanic position is a part-time position. It's not a full-time position, and in my humble estimation, it is not compensated in any real meaningful way, so that the service that the men and women put in on the city council, to my mind, is a great boon to the city in that it provides the city with experienced people without a high cost. And to suggest to men and women in this town of some means or some responsibility who have businesses of their own that they can't do business in any way with the city while they at the same time serve the city in an automatic position, I think is ridiculous. Now, should there be certain prohibitions? Perhaps. I'm not aware in my time on the council of any inappropriate behavior taken by any city councilman in this way. So I'm not sure what the brouhaha is. Are we trying to avoid even the hint of impropriety? I think that's an impossible standard, and one that I think does not serve the interests of the city. So to sum up, I think in order for this council to continue to be able to attract men and women from our community who have business ties in this community to this city council and its service, I myself am quite happy with the way the rules are currently.
Mr. Baker.
I have been the president of Copy Service Incorporated for going on 31 years now. This is something that my constituents, as they voted for me, were made aware of. This is something that I think actually brought in a diversity to the council, in that my experience as an entrepreneur since I was 19 years old and business person offers a unique point of view that could be limited if council people were told you can't be a business person, you can't be a contractor, you can't be a consultant, you can't be an engineer. I mean, we could go right up and down the list. We want the diversity on the council. The disclosure is made according to the state law at the time that we fill out our candidacy forms and file them at the county. I don't think that that we would be doing ourselves a service as a community to say to council people, you can't do business with the city. I think that if anything, there's an extra level of making sure that we sharpen our pencil if we were to bid on a contract that could actually save the city extra money above and beyond what normally might be bid. But in the course of everyday business, the time to discuss limiting or changing the rules, in my opinion, should be the same way, and that debate should take place the same way it did a year ago when we talked about wards 2, 4, 6, and mayor, when we took a vote to drop our pay by 10% and to change the way that we would participate in health insurance if we chose to take health insurance. That discussion for wards 1, 3, 5, and 7 would take place, I think, 180 days before the next election, which might be this time next year. If the city manager or the staff or the council wanted to elect a policy change that fit with the 20,000, maybe an extra disclosure at the point, like what is required of a contract or anyone, is that when an aggregate of 20,000 or more threshold is reached, maybe at that point we might want to consider an extra disclosure. But at this point, I think, and I've said the same words to all the newspapers that have contacted me, is that would be the time to talk about it, not to try to change it midstream. Not only would it be unfair to the council members as a whole, but it would be unfair to the community and violates what I consider the spirit of the law, in that we always make these changes for incoming aldermen so they can make these considerations before they decide to dedicate their time for community service.
Other comments? Mr. Teresinski.
Some thoughts, and I've gotten input and comments from citizens on this as well. So as I look through the purchasing procedures, I think there's a couple improvements that could be made that would be relatively painless. As far as the timing, I'd be certainly open to discuss whatever the appropriate time is, whatever our past practice is about implementation and so forth. In looking at some of the details, and specifically under the purchasing procedures aspect of this, it talks about the $10,000 to $20,000 level, and it talks about requiring an informal bidding process. I think some simple language changes there to require something in writing. If we're going to get a quotation, we received that specifically put in here, that the solicitation of price quotes be in writing. It doesn't say in a written form. And I heard
it's been our practice, but if it needs to be clarified, yes.
Well, and it may or may not be correct, but there were some comments about something being verbally done and so on and so forth. But just to eliminate that, suggest, and I'm on page 9, paragraph 1 of the $10,000 to $19,000 range. It's the third line in. It says solicitation of 2 price quotes. So if it was in written quotes,
sure.
Right, and that would imply, I guess, implicit in getting a quote is that there would be some specification that somebody's bidding or quoting to, right? There would be a written specification and a written, okay, thank you. The other thing, I would, in this case, I know the notification, I think there might be some clarity, transparency, if you will, that might come if something came up in a range that the council be made aware of it.